I recently visited Fort Scott in Kansas, and Fort Scott was a military base that was established in 1842, and there was so much to see there that I couldn't cram it all into one video. That would have made it an hour long. But there were two stories I wanted to make sure I shared with you that didn't make it into this week's video. On March 17, 1845, Captain Burdett A. Tourette of Company A, 1st U.S. Dragoons, accidentally shot and killed himself. Colonel S.W. Kearney wrote in his official report, "It is my painful duty to report the death of Captain B. A. Tourette, 1st Dragoons at Fort Scott on the 17th of March. As reported to me, he had just returned from drill on the morning of that day, having dismounted in front of his quarters, holding his pistol in his hand. His horse started, which caused it to be discharged, and the ball passed through the right lung, which caused his death in about 20 minutes. The regiment has lost in Captain Tourette a valuable officer and a much esteemed man." His wife ran to his side, and he told her, "I'm not hurt much." They had, just not 2 weeks prior, buried an infant. And this illustrates how rough life could be here on the frontier, even if you were an officer and living in posh accommodations. By 1855, the military had abandoned Fort Scott and the buildings were sold at auction. 2 of the buildings became hotels. During that time, Kansas Territory was experiencing violent fighting between the pro-slavery and the Free State or abolitionist settlers. The town of Fort Scott was in general pro-slavery, and the outlying countryside was more Free State. One of the infantry barracks became the Western Hotel, and that was pro-slavery. And the officers' quarters number 1, it became Fort Scott or the Free State Hotel. Rumor alleged that pro-slavery men met at the Western Hotel to plot the Maurice Decene massacre, and that had resulted in the murder of several Free State men. Seeking revenge, Free Stater James Montgomery, who was a Free State leader, led an armed band to Fort Scott 3 weeks later. They fired shots into homes and tried to burn down the hotel. But that wasn't the end of the violence. At daybreak on December 16, 1858, about 100 heavily armed Free Staters invaded Fort Scott to rescue Benjamin Rice. Rice had been arrested for murder and was imprisoned in the Fort Scott Hotel. Montgomery claimed that he was jailed illegally, so he came to Fort Scott to free him. They corralled hostages in front of the hotel and shots erupted. Deputy Marshal John Little, who was pro-slavery, peered out of a window of his father's store that was in the post headquarters that was right next to the hotel. His movement was noted by a Free Stater who shot and killed him. Montgomery and his band only left Fort Scott once Rice had been freed. Well, those are the 2 stories that I wanted to share with you guys this week. If you're interested, be sure and check out my big video all about Fort Scott.